You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Thank you for joining me here today on this Total Wellness Tuesday, where literally this question just came in just yesterday. I saw this on our free Facebook support group called cabralsupportgroup.com. You can just go to that URL if you're interested in joining and being a part of this online community that's literally growing every single day. Well, the question came in and it said, can I still have lactose-free milk if I'm sensitive, if I have a food sensitivity to cow's milk? And it was really interesting because what they did was they equated lactose-free with being then non-reactive to the body, because people who can't digest lactose would get bloating, gas, sometimes diarrhea, sometimes nausea, any of those things when they eat dairy or especially milk. But the difference is that is actually not an allergic reaction. So believe it or not, when you get bloating and when you get gas, that's not an allergic reaction. That is actually an inability to digest that food properly. So you might not be able to digest the food properly because of a lack of an enzyme. So the lack of the enzyme in this case for digesting milk or the lactose in milk would be called lactase. That's actually a sugar digesting enzyme because lactose is a sugar. It's milk sugar. And so what happens is when we can't digest that sugar, it starts to ferment in the gut and we can get gas, we can get bloating, all of those things. It can also happen from a lack of stomach acid, so many different things. But believe it or not, that is not really a food sensitivity. Yes, you're sensitive to the food, so I totally get that. I get that, like, yes, you should not eat that food because you're totally sensitive to it. I agree. However, when we talk about food sensitivity reactions, like when you run a food test, which I'll talk about in a moment, the reaction actually comes from the protein. So most likely when you have an aggravation in the gut or when you have an aggravation in the bloodstream, which I want to talk about the difference in a moment, it's typically coming from the protein. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, each food has a fat component, a sugar component, which is the carbohydrate, and then a protein component, which are the amino acids. So what happens is when we eat foods, we don't usually react to the fat. And that's why a lot of people are like, oh, I felt so great on a keto diet. Well, it's just not just the keto diet. What happens is they've eliminated the sugars that they might be fermenting in their gut, causing them bloating and gas from the carbohydrates. And they're going lower in the protein, so they're having less protein-based reactions because they're just eating 75% of their diet from fat. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily healthy, but what it means is I can totally understand their situation because they've eliminated a lot of the foods that they were sensitive to. Now, that's no way to live in the long run, but I totally get it in the short term because you don't want to suffer from the bloating, the gas, the autoimmune, the whatever issues you're having. So let's really get down today, understand why by eliminating the foods that you're sensitive to, you have less inflammation, which means that you're going to have less reactions. You're going to feel better. So a quick recap on the sensitivities that people can have to food are typically an IgE and an IgG. Now, there are different ones as well. There's an IgM and there's an IgA, but let's go with the two main ones, okay? The two main ones are IgE. Think of it this way. IgE means an immediate reaction. I always think E, immediate, little alliteration going on there. And what we're looking at are foods that react in your body from your immune cells turning on within seconds to maybe hours. The best known IgE reaction is something like a peanut-based allergy, okay? So the child eats a peanut, and all of a sudden their throat starts to swell, they go into anaphylactic-based shock, and that's obviously the most severe case. Now, most people with an IgE reaction, an immediate reaction, which then minutes or hours of eating the food, I always use shellfish as an example. Some people eat mussels or, shrimp, and all of a sudden they have an IgE reaction. Well, what is that? It's itchiness in the back of the throat. It's itchy eyes, itchy skin, itchy belly. It might be hives. It could be red ears. It could be runny eyes, like watery runny eyes. Could be a headache, could be brain fog. I get, so one thing with me is I can get the red airs or I could get the brain fog. I guess I could have any of them, for me, because the amount of histamines that my body will tend to produce. Those are my IgE reactions. Now, again, I just named all the IgE reactions. Some people get a migraine and some people get the headaches and all the different things that come along with it, because what's happening is they're getting an immediate based immune response. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, it means that their immune system, in this case, what's called immunoglobulin E. So this type of immunoglobulin, or think white blood cell, is going after that food, namely the proteins in that food that it detects to be a foreign pathogen, meaning something that should not be in your body. So your body has tagged it, it's marked it, and it says, we need to go after this thing to disable it and remove it from the body. That's exactly what your body's doing. So again, when people say that, well, your body's messing up, it's this, no. That's exactly what your body believes it should be doing. Now, do we want it to do that? No, and we can fix that, and I'm going to go through that today, but we have to just understand that's an IgE reaction, all right? I'm going to talk about how to test them with lab testing and then also without lab testing. And so the next one, though, I want to bring up is an IgG test or an IgG reaction. And that means that you eat a food, let's say it is shellfish, and you have no reaction. You don't have the red airs, the watery eyes, the brain fog, the headache, the skin rashes, the hives, any of those. You don't have any of that, okay? But what happens is a day later or 2 days later, or believe it or not, up to 72 hours, you could have a reaction. And what are those reactions? Well, an IgG latent-based reaction is typically more like lethargy, the brain fog, the fatigue, the muscle weakness, the pain in the joints, any of those things, even a headache a day or two later. So skin rashes, and those are called delayed or latent-based reactions. So think of IgE as an immediate reaction and think of IgG as a delayed reaction. Now, a lot of times when children get their food tested, they always test IgE. And that's because those are more of like we'll call them deadly based reactions, where they can have a real harsh reaction. And that could be life-threatening. Well, the IgG over time just builds up. It just kind of like builds up the inflammatory response. Because remember, every time you eat a food that you have a reaction to, you're building up inflammation. And people are like, well, how does that happen? Well, the way that you build up inflammation is that your immune system turns on, your white blood cells go after attacking something, whether it's the nerves, like the myelin sheath, or whether it's that was being like MS and your joints and rheumatoid arthritis, your thyroid and Hashimoto's, or sarcoidosis going after, something in the lungs or the eyes or the heart. But remember, like these are all reactions from your immune system. And then with those reactions comes some type of tissue-based destruction or cells being destroyed through something called autophagy is just part of it, but macrophages and all the different things that kind of engulf these pathogens in your body. Well, what happens is then they need to be cleaned out. And so this is where like the puffiness, the water retention, the fatigue, all that comes from your immune system being chronically elevated. So this is why I talk about as well all the time. And I actually just put out I'm just getting a little bit more into YouTube videos. I wish I could do like 2 or 3 a week. In the future, I will be, but right now there's so much going on. I don't have the time to be able to do that, but I would love to because I can teach then on a whiteboard or teach a little bit more like a seminar. But here's the thing. I always tell people that the video was called The Truth About Inflammation. You're welcome to look that up. And here's the truth, though. The truth is that inflammation is not an underlying root cause. So you're inflamed, but we just saw in this case, the reason why you're inflamed and you have the joint pain or the autoimmune, whatever it is, well, you ate a food that then reacted in your body a couple of days later. You didn't know it was from the food because when you have the cheese, the dairy, the gluten, the eggs, the whatever, you felt fine. And that's the problem. You feel fine. You feel completely fine if you don't have the IgE reaction. When you have the IgG, you feel fine. And then the next day, 2 days later, you're like, why do I feel run down? Or why do my joints hurt? Or why do I feel tired or brain fog? Well, here's the thing. Your immune system has been turned on and you're inflamed. Well, the inflammation doesn't need necessarily curcumin or bromelain or any of these things to modulate it. What it needs is for you to eliminate the foods that you're sensitive to, right? Because then you won't have the immune-based reaction. So that's why I'm never against curcumin and I'm never against bromelain or just all these great products. I mean, there's so many that I can name right now, but then people always ask me, should I use this one? Should I not? The truth is that, so all of those are great in the short term, and you can even use something like curcumin, for long-term benefits of that for anti-aging. But the truth is this, is that by using Advil or NSAIDs or more natural roots like the curcumin, like all of those are fine and great. But what you want to do is use those while finding the underlying root causes. Because again, this is the rain barrel effect in action, right? When you eat foods that you're sensitive to, you start to fill up that rain barrel. And all of a sudden, when you fill it up enough, whether it's from stress, lack of sleep, the foods that you're not eating properly, too much or too little exercise, not enough detoxification, boom, then the results come all of a sudden one day and you're like, how did this happen? Well, you just hit your tipping point, right? You hit the part where your rain barrel started to overflow and now you can see the symptoms. The only way out of this is to start to detoxify, or as I say it, empty your rain barrel. And in this case, what would detoxifying be? Well, in this case, it would be eliminating the foods that you're sensitive to. So I want to teach you right now, just in the next couple minutes, what we do in my practice, whether someone decides to run a food sensitivity test or not run a food sensitivity test. This is exactly what we do. So, because this will rebalance your body. Remember, like there's always a reason why. There's always a reason why. So everyone in my practice, I always just say, okay, like, hey, if this happens, it was because of this. If we get positive results, great, we know why. If we get neutral results, we just keep going. If we get negative results in a part of it, we can always test which part of our fundamentals didn't work, and then we know a way around that. So like, there's always an answer. There is always an answer. The only time you are not going to be able to figure it out is if you give up. And this is just one more instance. So I want to give you this right now because again, literally almost every person that we work with in our practice, if they're able to, they run these food sensitivity tests, but we also try to save them money. So here's exactly what we do. We no longer run an IgE test. Why don't we run an IgE test? It's an extra $300 something. So without us running the IgE test, what we do is we have people become more aware of how they feel within a half hour to a couple hours after eating that meal, because that's going to be the IgE reaction. So after the meal, did you get the bloating or gas? Well, that's not a food-based sensitivity, but that is a digestion issue with that food that you just ate. So we do ask that question, okay? But then we also ask, well, do you feel more fatigued? And again, that can be digestive-based, or any hives, any itchiness, any of the red ears, any of the itchy palm, any of the watery eyes, any headache, any brain fog? If so, most likely something in that meal caused a reaction. I'm going to even tell you how to set up your meals to be able to figure out in just one moment. So that's why we save people money now, because we understand that functional medicine lab testing can be expensive. But the truth is, there's just like some things that are worth spending the money on. I truly believe that. I'll give you my example. And I know not everyone's in this position, and I want to be really sensitive to that because I do understand. I remember, they didn't even test me when I was 17 years old. I waited till I found a functional medicine doctor when I was 18, 19 years old. And they said, hey, we want to run a stool test, a food sensitivity test, an adrenal test, like all these tests. And unfortunately, at the time, we couldn't really afford all of them. It was, they were very, very expensive. But what we did run is we ran a food sensitivity test and we ran an adrenal hormone-based test. And that was my introduction to functional medicine. And that doctor was the one who got me on the right path. He figured out all these different issues I was having. And we just looked at the foods. These were healthy foods, by the way. Like, we're testing healthy foods, or so-called healthy foods, right? And I was eating these foods all the time. Every time I was eating them, I was having another immune-based reaction. Almonds, kidney beans, and chili, like all these things that I thought were healthy for me. They are healthy, right? For some people, but I always ask for who? Healthy for who, right? So then for me, they weren't healthy. So I found that out, and right away. Now, did it fix everything? No, because what you're looking to do is empty that rain barrel. So it emptied it a little bit. So I started to feel a little better. That's all I needed. Then I started to work on my adrenals, and then I started to feel a little bit better. And then I worked on this and this, and everything started to get better. Now, remember, everything also helps everything, right? So nothing works as an individual item in your body. Every system is connected. So as you're helping one system, it takes some of the weight off of another. It's amazing how that works. So what we do is we have the IgE, and we tell people, how do you feel after that meal? And we also have them look at their children. How is your child reacting? Is their behavior out of control after eating that food within minutes or hours? Okay, that's an IgE reaction. It has to be one of the components in that meal. Now, we do test for the IgG. I'll give you a way around it if you need to, although I would love you to run this IgG food sensitivity test. So here's the deal with this. IgG means a latent response. Remember, a day, 2 days, 3 days later. So that means if you're listening to this on a Tuesday, well, it potentially you ate the food on what, a Sunday, right? It could be a Saturday night, it could be a Sunday, and now you're reacting on Tuesday. That's how delayed the response can be. So that's why it's a little bit of a challenge to figure it out. It really is, because think about it. If you've had 9 meals since you're having the reaction, which component in which one of those meals was the issue. So here's what we do. If you're not able to run the lab test, we have people do what's called a rotation-based diet. Check out my podcast on that, all right? Just go to stevencabral.com/podcasts, and it's called How to Create Your Own Food Rotation Diet. I did that just a couple weeks ago. I'm trying to find it here in my notes. Okay, it was episode 754. So just go to stevencabral.com/754, How to Create Your Own Food Rotation Diet. So we actually give you exactly what we do in my practice. So this will help health practitioners, help their patients and wellness clients, and it will help you and your family as well if you can't figure out why you're having these delayed responses, okay? The brain fog, the joint pain, the rundown, the inflammation all over, the stiffness, the tightness in the body. So check out that episode 754 on how to create your own rotation diet. So it's basically a 3-day rotation diet, 72 hours. So you're never eating the same thing within that 72 hours. So super, super simple. We teach you exactly how to do that if you're not able to run the IgG food reaction test. But let's say that you do. And again, if you have the means, if you're able to do it, we run it for kids all the way from like 2 years old, and then we run it all the way up to 100 years old in our practice. And here's what it tells you. So again, you're going to think of this in your own life, whether you run the lab or not, is that the foods with a mild sensitivity. So on an IgG test, all right, here's the thing. So if you've never heard of it before, it's literally a simple at-home lab test that you can prick your finger. So you just use a little lancet like a type 2 diabetic would do. And they send you a blood drop card, okay? And you literally drop the blood in the circles on the card. You let it dry for a half hour and then you mail it into the lab. Super simple. Again, we ship these to all over the US. We ship them to Australia. We ship them to the UK, and we ship them to Canada. Let's say you're overseas in Europe right now listening to this. We will eventually ship to you one day, or South America, or some other place, right? In Asia. You can ask your functional medicine doctor to run this IgG. Remember, IgG is the one you're looking for, food sensitivity test. And then that you will get the results. All lab tests pretty much look the same. So that's why I want to explain it to you right now. Here's what it looks like. Okay. So there's typically a green, a yellow, an orange, and a red column. All right. So there's anywhere from 3 to 4. And anyone in the green, like any food that you'll see a little black line, the longer the black line, usually the more the food sensitivity. That means the greater the immune response. What happens if you have a greater immune response? More inflammation, more tissue destruction, okay? So here's the deal. On the food sensitivity test that we send out to people, like I said, anywhere in the world, if they have a reaction above a 1.75, so you get a number on your lab test, and if it's towards the end of the green and it's above a 1.75, there's 3 eliminations. I want to teach you those right now. Again, if you're a health practitioner, if you're a doctor, you're doing this with your own patients or wellness clients, this is what we do, and you can do this in your own practice. If it's in the yellow or towards the end of the green above a 1.75, we eliminate that food completely for 6 weeks, all right? Now, if it's in the orange, we eliminate it for 12 weeks. And if it's in the dark orange or red, we eliminate it for 6 months. And here's why. If, this has been shown too, if we give the body, the immune system, time to calm down, right? As we start to empty that rain barrel and calm the body down, then the immune response should not be as pronounced. But we're also doing something at the same time. If we see a large amount of sensitivity to foods, if we haven't run an organic acids test, which of course will show you a lot of that impermeability, but if we haven't done that, then we're going to start to seal up the gut wall. And sealing up the gut wall, we do a 12-week protocol, and that's called our gut rebuilding protocol. So we'll eliminate the foods, and we'll rebuild and reseal that gut wall. Now, the proteins will hopefully not be able to escape through that gut wall, so your immune cells won't see them. And we're going to use digestive enzymes, so the daily digestive enzyme, to start breaking down your food better. We're going to put the gut rebuilding protocol contains the daily probiotic support. So we're going to rebuild that gut. Again, if you ran the organic acids test and you saw you had candida overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth, or you ran a stool test and you saw you had H. pylori, well, you'll eliminate those over the 12 weeks as well, and you'll seal up the gut wall after that. And then you can start to reintroduce these foods, because for most people, after you rebuild the gut and you seal up the gut wall, the sensitivities go away. Again, so these aren't things that I'm making up. We prove this in clinical practice. For example, just as an example, I started practicing when? 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. And functional medicine, meaning I was always doing nutrition before that, and personal training, which seems like a lifetime ago. You know, it's just been a while. But here's the deal. This has been done for decades and decades and decades, and then thousands of years. Now, they didn't have testing back then, but they knew immune-based sensitivities. They had all these amazing ways too back then of helping to decrease the immune response. So what we do is we go through the either gut rebuilding protocol or the Candida bacterial overgrowth protocol or parasite, whatever's needed, then the gut rebuilding. And then after we're done with it, we retest your food sensitivity test. And you'll see that those black lines, for the most part, have all decreased, especially towards egg, which a lot of people can be sensitive to, a lot of times towards nuts, like I had almonds, those types of things. But some of them may not go down. That's what I want to warn you about as well. Some may not go down even when you close up the gut wall and you repair your digestive system. What does that mean? Well, that means most likely that food for you is a genetic susceptibility. Your immune system, your genetics do not like the protein code, the amino acid strand of that food. So if that happens, you'll just know you may have a reaction to this food. Not life-threatening, most likely, or anything like that, because it's an IgG. But it's your choice if you want to have it as a once-a-week cheat or a once-a-month cheat, that you may feel not so great the next day or day after. And that's kind of your choice. And it is. A lot of people, they don't want to give up bread completely or pasta completely, but they know after they eat it, next day they feel like a little bit of brain fog. Okay, but they're willing to deal with that once a month, twice a month, because they're in a social setting or it's one of their favorite foods. Okay, no big deal. After a couple of days of eating that food, the inflammation then squelches and you start to feel better. Plus, now they know they can take certain enzymes to help break down those foods. If it's a larger protein, they could take some betaine HCl if they want to. So, there's different ways around that. And I talked about my digestive bitters and things like that on previous shows. So, this is exactly how we do it. So we do what's called a 6-week, 12-week, and 6-month elimination based on the severity of your food reactions. Now, if you're not doing a food sensitivity test, you wouldn't know exactly the severity of the reaction, except for kind of how you feel. And by doing a rotation diet, you may be able to figure that out. And so there's always that possibility, meaning like you can always do that. You can always figure it out. And I will always give you a way to do it with lab testing or on your own to test it. And so this is exactly, like I said, what we do in my practice for children really around just about 2 years old and up. And really, really important. And the reason why that's important as well, we've done it for kids as young as, let's say, like 8 months or so. And the reason we've done that is just we've seen the psoriasis, the cradle cap, those types of things be very large reactions for what the mother is eating if she's nursing her child, as well as what the child's eating. But do keep in mind that a child's gut, their intestines, they're a baby up to 2 years old. It's not even meant to be closed, meaning like they have intestinal permeability for a reason. And the reason is they're getting their mother's antibodies from their milk that passes into their bloodstream, then acts as a reaction. Now, that's normal. That's supposed to happen. I don't want to give too much information on that today and throw you off, but that's normal. But really for kids right around 1.5 years, 2 years, all the way up in life, I can't recommend enough the IgG food sensitivity test, but also looking for your immediate reactions with that IgE reaction, meaning like if you get the hives, the skin rash, any of the itching, any of the brain fog, the immediate headache within minutes to hours after eating the food, you have to check that out. You really have to become aware of it because remember, it's not just about your digestion, it's overall inflammation. When you eat a food that you have a reaction to, when you're sensitive to that food, what happens is you create inflammation systemically. Not just in the intestines, but the inflammation in the entire body. It's like a little war zone going on. And that actually does affect the brain. It affects the joints. It affects stiffness. It affects your thinking, your cognitive ability. So, and since food is something that we're eating probably like 3 meals a day, right? For a lot of people, 3 meals a day. Sometimes there's snacks. That's why I believe it just is like nutrition. Food is the basis point of where we start to help people get well because that is it, right? Food contains all of the nutrients that our body needs to heal. But if we're eating foods that we believe are healthy, aren't actually healthy for us and are causing an inflammatory-based immune response, that's obviously not going to do us any good or help out our cause in the long run. So again, we've been offering the food sensitivity in our practice for many years. It's one of our most popular labs. And what I wanted to do today, and I literally just talked to my team yesterday, I'm like, is it good? Are we good if we offer a little bit of a promotion on the food sensitivity test, just as a pop-up? Like literally, no one knows about this except podcast listeners. And I think we're going to hold it until Friday. So today's a Tuesday or whatever while supplies last. But my team, knows how many we actually have lab-wise. So we're going to offer this at $299. So the food sensitivity test is typically, I believe, $365, which again is a phenomenal deal in my opinion. And the reason is that you get your food sensitivity test, I review your results, and then you get actually a 30-minute health coaching call with one of my amazing health coaches that takes you through my recommendations, through your results, and really helps guide you on the 6-week, 12-week, and 6-month elimination. Pretty amazing, pretty great. It really can be the catalyst to getting you back on track. So this is literally a fun little pop-up. I love doing these little things like this. Hopefully you enjoy them as well. I do want to do them in the future, just kind of a pop-up here and there. If I'm talking about it, if I think it's really important that I want to see you do it, then I'll do my best to always bring these things to you. So it's just literally while the link is live, then the deal is good to go whenever my team takes it down. That means we are literally out and it will just go back to the normal price. So we'll always offer it, but it will just go back to that normal price. So just go to StephenCabral.com/809, StephenCabral.com/809. And that will have the special link for the discounted food sensitivity test. Again, this is just for today, tomorrow, like the next day or two. So if you listen to this podcast 3 months in the future, a year in the future, the pop-up is over. But I just wanted to, just two things. I don't know. I think it's a lot of fun. Functional medicine lab testing, maybe people don't enjoy it as much as I do, but I love seeing people start to not guess, test, look at their results, start to then calculate what they need to do, and then move forward. And I really believe that it's one of those things that's just like catalyst, right? So it's like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm investing in myself. I'm going to start to eat healthier. I'm going to start to do other things that are healthy, like exercise and, take my nutritional supplements, like do all of those different things, right? So hopefully you enjoy it. I appreciate, as always, you tuning into the Cabral concept. Hopefully the content was valuable today. Let me know if I missed something, if you'd like me to review it in the future. Remember, this topic actually came from one of our CabralSupportGroup.com community members. I'll link that up in the show notes today as well. It's a totally free support group where we answer your questions, just trying to give back, pay it forward as much as we can. And again, all the show notes are at StephenCabral.com/809. Have a great day, everyone. And I'll be back tomorrow with our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.